Thank you, Madam Secretary. My time has expired. I recognize Mr. Levin for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Haaland, it's wonderful to see you. We miss you here on the Natural Resources Committee. Really glad you're here to discuss the department's work and the importance of providing sustained funding for you to continue your many critical initiatives that help protect our public lands, promote domestic clean energy production, and provide outdoor recreation opportunities. The department has clearly been very busy over the last few weeks, and we're grateful to hear your announcements and see final rules that are promoting renewable energy development on public lands, holding oil and gas companies accountable, and recognizing the vital role that conservation has in public lands management. I'm glad that you and the Biden administration are advancing historic action on climate change, commensurate with what this moment in history demands. I was pleased in particular to hear that we're already surpassing the goal Congress set in the Energy Act of 2020 to permit 25 gigawatts of renewable energy on public lands by 2025, with DOI already successfully permitting 29 gigawatts ahead of schedule. As you know, the Public Lands Renewable Energy Development Act, or PLREDA, which has long been bipartisan legislation I'm proud to champion, promotes the responsible development of wind, solar, and geothermal resources on federal land. It's endorsed by both industry and conservation organizations. I see this bill as working in conjunction with DOI's recently finalized renewable energy rule and the ongoing Western Solar PEIS process. The bill includes revenue sharing for states, communities, and a conservation fund, and incentivizes development in low-conflict priority areas. It will ultimately help ensure we can meet our dual climate goals of 1, enhancing renewable energy permitting and deployment, and 2, conserving our nation's treasured natural and cultural resources. So, Secretary, can you tell me more about how the administration is working to facilitate environmentally responsible renewable energy development on federal lands?
Thank you so much, Congressman, and thank you for your welcome here. It's always wonderful to be back in your company. Yes, we are. I'm very proud of the fact that we have met this goal ahead of schedule. Thank you for recognizing that. I just returned from Arizona, where we essentially cut a ribbon on the 10 West transmission line that will carry energy across state line, so into your state as well. The 500 kilovolt line, it was possible because of our early outreach and engagement. And I want to emphasize the great work of Interior staff, specifically for this project, the BLM, who knows the communities very well and engages with them early. And I think that is the key to ensuring that we can move more of these projects forward.
Can you, along those lines, compare the projects that have successfully gone through the permitting process with those that may have struggled due to community opposition? And specifically, can you speak to any correlation between how actively project sponsors engage with interested or impacted communities early on or prior to the permitting process and positive project outcomes, or how a lack of stakeholder engagement might create project delays or even cancellations?
Thank you very much, Congressman. And as I mentioned, the early outreach allows for more informed participation from tribes and stakeholders. Public buy-in also increases public confidence in these projects and reduces the risk of costly and time-consuming litigation. And I'd like to point out that for renewable energy projects, our recently finalized rule ensures there is an initial in-person meeting with the public, because we and the public have seen the improvements and outcomes from early engagement. So I really believe that is the key, and we'll follow that and move forward.
Thank you for that. Another major announcement that came out was the final oil and gas rule, which set fair royalty and bonding rates for oil and gas operators on public lands for the first time in decades, and implemented reforms Congress enacted in the Inflation Reduction Act, including some that my colleagues and I on this committee have championed. The final rule will hold oil and gas companies accountable for their impacts on public lands and provide a fair return for taxpayers. We sometimes hear that the bonding reforms are unwarranted. I've heard the claim there are only 37 documented orphan wells on BLM land. Can you take a moment to tell us why this may be a misrepresentation of the issue?
Thank you, Congressman. I first want to point out that the rule reflects provisions in the Inflation Reduction Act pertaining to increased royalty rates, rentals, minimum bids, and expressions of interest. The increase in bonding helps keep taxpayers from being on the hook. We I've traveled around the country and to lift up the work that we're doing on orphan gas wells and abandoned mine lands. And it's pretty clear that taxpayers foot the bill on so many of these things. We want to make sure that companies have the wherewithal to clean up after themselves. So this rule updates oil and gas bonding requirements for the first time in 60 years to ensure reclamation costs are not borne by the American public.
Thanks, Secretary. I'm out of time. Yield back.
Mr. Chair, I ask